If you have your Bibles, would you turn to Exodus chapter 3 this morning? Just want to read a few verses in Exodus chapter 3. When we get to Exodus chapter 3, this is kind of the point where the Israelites have been in slavery for a number of years. And as we come to chapter 3, God is going to begin to take action. And in chapter 3, verse 11, I want to pick up there and read a few verses. It says this: "But Moses said to God, 'Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?' And God said, 'I will be with you, and this will be a sign, the sign to you, that is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain.' Moses said to God, 'Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, "The God of your fathers has sent me to you." And they ask me, "What is his name?" Then what shall I tell them?" Verse 14, God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites: 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation." There's been a few things that have been very heavy on my heart. I think over the last, it's not just the recent events that have kind of happened in our world, in our society, but I think over the last several years, there have been a few things that have really caught my attention. And these things have caused me to really study and really reflect on the Bible and on God, and more importantly, I think on the promises of God. And as I reflected, I've drawn several conclusions that I want to share with you this morning. And as we look at these conclusions, I want to challenge us as Christians how we ought to respond to the things that I want to share this morning. First of all, I didn't think this was the case so much a few years ago, but I think definitely today, I think persecution is alive and well. And I read an article in Christianity Today that just, the headline really caught my attention. ISIS kills Christians. I mean, we see this headline constantly. You know, several years ago, I think already, 21 Christians were beheaded, right? And that was, the video was posted on the web, and people were kind of looking at it. I think I was talking to one of the pastors at church last year, and he said he made the mistake of watching that video. And he said he regrets it because of the brutality of that video. 21 Christians. It's a subtle reminder that Christians, that we face great dangers. You know, persecution is a reality that is, I think, smacking us in the face. It cannot be ignored because it's so right there. In this article that I read this past week, 12 Christians were killed. And among the 12, there was also a 12-year-old boy, as well as several women. And when we see what's going on in this part of the world, as you know, Syria is, there's a civil war that's going on in Syria right now. The president is still trying to hold on to power. There's people, different factions that kind of are opposing his views, or actually it's kind of also a war on different sects, right? You know, different parts of the Muslim community as well. But in Syria, you have this radicalized group called ISIS. And they are literally going from town to town, conquering, and when they do so, they set up these various laws. And one of the laws that they set up is, I think they did this out in other parts like in Iraq as well, but they set up they set up a law that says it's illegal to be a Christian. And when they find Christians, they always have to do this public display. So in this case, on August 28th, outside of a village, a small village outside of a city called Aleppo in Syria, in front of the team leader as well as the crowd, the Islamic extremists, they took the 11-year-old boy and they began to cut off his finger, little by little. And they looked at the father and said, if you renounce Christianity and come back to Islam, we will stop. This is out in public, because they have to do it in public, because it needs to have some kind of an impact and fear, so that others who are in the underground churches or whatever would renounce Christ out of fear. So in public, they began to do this. They said, we will stop the torture. We will stop cutting off your son's finger. We'll stop beating him if you renounce Christ. And the father refused. He was the team leader who was responsible for planting like 9 churches in that area. When he refused, they got angry. They brought him as well as the other workers, and they beat them as well. And this is the part of the story that I think that really kind of just got my ears a little perked up and my heart sank a little bit more. Then they were executed by crucifixion. This is 2015. We read about crucifixion during the time of Jesus. We read about the persecution that happens during the time and immediately after. We read about the stories of the mass crucifixions that were very common, as the Romans were trying to really oppress the revolt or the revolution of the Jews. 30, 40 years after Jesus' time. 2015, we have this militant group halfway around the world that are crucifying Christians, that have really no filter when it comes to age or gender. Persecution is happening in our time. Unfortunately, persecution is not limited just to the Middle East. Persecution is happening here in America. My wife and I were talking about this a little bit this past week now. I think persecution used to be very subtle, but it's becoming much more out. The media, the social media. I don't know if you ever read the comment sections from some articles that you come across. Sometimes I read them just for entertainment's sake, because you get some incredible reactions. I went to University of Oregon. This year we suck. We're so bad. We have no quarterback. Marcus Mariota, after he graduated last year, is like, oh my. We have quarterbacks that cannot throw the ball. So we have to run the ball, and the defense knows we have to run the ball. And so at 3-3, the fan base of University of Oregon is about to jump off a bridge. And sometimes you read the articles, or you read those things, you read these comments, and people are just all over the place. The internet is one of those things where it's good that there's information and you can get it almost instantaneously, but it also is a place that we can hide behind a screen name, and we can say anything we want. When you read certain articles, especially about the shooting that took place a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago, when you read some of the responses from people, it's really shocking with some of the things that they say. It comes from both the conservative as well as the liberal. Some of the conservatives are, their thing is they shove the Bible down other people's throats. Then some of the liberals, we saw this when the Supreme Court ruled about gay marriage. You go to the forums and it's amazing how much emotion there is. It's just charged emotion, and people calling that Christians kind of coming from that I am greater, I am holier than you attitude, of just coming down. Not in a loving way at all. I saw no love at all. And once in a while, a person would kind of come from a loving perspective and they get attacked from both sides. And that's kind of the world that we live in. Over a week ago at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, we heard more news of a mass shooting in America. I don't know how many that is already this year. I think there's a group actually that keeps track of mass killings. And this year, if I remember correctly, we're over 100, I think. They define mass killings as those where more than X number of people are killed in one event. So an event like a random shooting where 1 or 2 people are killed, that is not considered mass killings. But in this case, where 9 people were killed, they considered this, as well as this Charleston, South Carolina, when 9 people were killed there as well. This is Roseburg, small community. It's a city that is so safe. They don't, I think I heard, they had no sexual crime last year, none. They don't really have many robberies. Those are very uncommon. People feel very safe leaving things open, unlocked, and such like that. This happened to a community where, from most accounts, it was a very, very safe and very, very easy place to live. It hits a lot closer to home. This didn't happen across the country, but it happened within our own state. It's not in Syria, it's in America, it's in Oregon. The day after shooting, the shooting took place October 1st, last Thursday. The day after the shooting on Friday, there was this hashtag, I am a Christian, that was kind of trending on Twitter and social media. The presidential candidate, Ben Carson, he posted a picture on Facebook with this word, I am a Christian, with the fish underneath. And it became, immediately just, when it's trending, that means people are using that hashtag, right? They're liking it, they're sharing it. So it's one of those things where people are like, okay. It was almost like this statement and that image with Ben Carson, it's almost like that became a rallying cry for Christians to come together, to unite, and to say, we have to stand firm in this time of tragedy and sorrow. Persecution is alive in 2015. It's happening in all regions of the world, including where you and I live. That is the reality that I think that hit home for me recently. And the shootings just affirmed it. The reason why this shooting was so different is because as the details began to come out about the shooting, there was one part of it that I think it kind of went unnoticed a little bit. Some New York Times carried the article a little bit, but it was like just thrown out there, and then they moved on to other things because they don't want to address this issue. And what that issue is, the gunman asked a particular question. According to one account, he went into I think it was called the Schneider Hall, and he went into the classroom. He was a student in that class. Pulled out a gun. I don't know, he told everyone to sit down or whatever, but he shot the professor, and the professor was the first person that he killed. Then he had students stand one by one, and when the person stood up, he asked them a particular question. He asked them, are you a Christian? If they answered yes, he shot them in the head. If they answered no or didn't answer, he shot them in the leg. 9 people ultimately were killed, and many others were wounded or injured. That's why I think this hashtag began to trend on Friday. Because just that bit of information about what the government asked, it brought an awakening of emotion. And for the Christian community, I think many of them were feeling, we got to do something. So that's kind of what was trending. We Christians are under attack. it's not so subtle anymore. It's there. And events at UCC campus really does bring that to light. Second thing, second conclusion that I've come to draw is this: not only is persecution alive and well, but brokenness is all around us. You know, these senseless acts of violence, they demonstrate just the degree of brokenness that is in our world. These tragic events, they strike at our core. You know, we experience conflicting emotions. On the one hand, there's anger that is directed, right, towards the people that do the harm or cause the harm. But also at the same time, there's anger that is directed towards God. God, how can you allow this to happen? How can this continue to happen in our world today? We seek answers, we find none. Or at least we find no answers to our liking. We seek and we find and we ask nothing. It's natural to experience these wide range of emotions. And I think in all cases, the person responsible for the horrific acts of violence, they all have one thing in common. They are broken people. They live in this broken world. I look around, maybe you experience some hardship in your life, but for me, honestly, my parents, they made tremendous sacrifice to immigrate and move from Korea to America. The first generation, the immigrant generation, their mindset always is, we want life better for our children. And for the most part, I think they accomplished that by moving here. We lived in a very, very good time. I haven't had much suffering in my life. I don't know what brokenness is because I never lived in a broken home. I never experienced brokenness. I don't know people around me. For the most part, everything was good. I know that today things are different for many people. Last summer, I took a team out to San Francisco. We did some inner city ministry, and we spent a week in the inner city of San Francisco. The San Francisco inner city the area is called the Tenderloin. The Tenderloin district is a place that, if you go to TripAdvisor, look at San Francisco and type in like Tenderloin District, you'll find a lot of people's comments and warnings. Stay away from the Tenderloin, they'll say, because it's a dangerous place. I mean, it's the inner city. It's like if you go to LA, people will tell you don't go to the Watts, right? Don't go to Compton. Stay out of those areas because it's dangerous. In Portland, I don't know. Killingsworth, Northeast 27th, Killingsworth, something like that, I don't know. That area used to have a lot of shootings of violence in the past. I don't know if that's the case now, but Northeast was definitely a little bit more dangerous than Southwest, Northwest, for sure. But Tenderloin, stay out. It's a dangerous place. If any of you have ever been to San Francisco, and you know where Union Square is, and if you follow a little bit south of Union Square on, I think Powell Boulevard, there is the trolley, the turnaround. It's like a big touristy thing. People wait there, they wait in line that wraps around the thing. Trolleys come, or cable cars, they come. These guys get out and they begin to push. And they turn that thing facing the other direction. It comes out, people get on, and then you take that trip up the hill, over down into the views of the city. That is like the heart of the tourist area of San Francisco. Union Square, there's a lot of the financial district is down there. And so as we were coming out from the airport, we took the BART, which is like the rail system, train, subway. We went up, we got off at the Powell BART station. We came up the escalator, and as you're coming up the escalator, you see the rust, the sound of the city, the cars and the people. When you come out, you see these high-rise buildings. There's a Gap, Forever 21, all these other shops and stores. And people are just going back and forth. We met the guy, our guide from the City Impact Ministry. And he led us west. tourists smell, air is nice, people are dressed really well. Hop over one street. We were on Eddy Street. We went 1 block. We went 2 blocks. And then a particular odor began to come into my nose. I was like, what is that smell? And it just kept on getting stronger and stronger. And then the scenery, the people changed all of a sudden. 2 blocks. We walked 2 blocks. From the nice, well-dressed people, we go and you see people sitting on the streets. There's an odor of urine. And I'm like, just watching where I step because there's species. You know, it's just on the street. It's like, what? How? You don't clean this up? This is San Francisco, 2 blocks from Union Square. It's amazing to me. We see all these people out in the streets. It was a 3-block walk to their office. And it seemed like forever for us that first day. I felt very unsafe or uneasy. Here I am, I have 9 other people and I'm responsible for, and we are walking through what I felt like one of the most unsafest parts that I've ever been through. It was something that really took us, Southern California, Orange County, men and women, it took us out of our comfort zone. But it was such an incredible week. As we began to do ministry to the people in the city, in the Tenderloin district, one of the things that really, I think, surprised me was their openness and their kindness. You know, when you think about the inner city, I don't know what you think. You think about crime, you think about homeless people, right? Kind of asking, panhandling on the streets. We didn't get any of that. Not once did anyone ever come up to us and ask, hey, I'm hungry, can you spare $1? Like you go downtown Portland, you're bombarded left and right? There's none of that in that area. People are very kind, very nice. One of the things that we do, they take a bag of, we take boxes of chips. We go out and we take bags of chips and we just walk up. And when people see that, they'll be across the street. They'll be like, hey! Come running across, hey, come on, hey, what you got here tonight? And they start digging through it. They're like, oh yeah, they take what they want. And then we simply ask them, hey, how's it going? It's going good, it's going well. And then we begin to dialogue with them. In that area, because of this, the ministry has done this for so long, a bag of chips allows you to have a conversation with a stranger. But more than that, as we begin to talk with them, we simply ask them, what's going on? Can we pray for you? They're very receptive. I remember one day, this guy, he was a big guy. He had a jacket on, looked like an old leather, a Letterman jacket style. It was zipped up halfway. He had no shirt underneath. His, pectoral muscles were this big. They're standing nice. This big old guy, and he's like coming over to us. I was like, oh, just keeping an eye on this guy. I felt we didn't know what to expect. He was with a couple other guys, and but as we kind of walk along the street, our team kind of got separated a little bit. So I was in the group in front, and I turned back and I'm watching this unfold. And I see the dialogue and everything, and you see a couple of the guys are just messing around, messing around with our team members a little bit too. And then I see that, and this guy in the hat on, he takes it off, and he's like this in the middle of the street. He's this big old guy, and then the other guys are just like messing around. He takes the hat, and he smacks it, and he said, and the other guys go like this. Turned out that was his brother and cousin. And right after he prayed, he's like, thank you, and he's like hugging them. And he's walking away, and then he's like, don't you disrespect them. And he walked by us. He's like, hey, how you doing? I was like, hi. He walks away. That's just the friendliness and the openness. It really shocked us, and it took us back a little bit. It's not what I expected. One of the gentlemen that I met, as I was talking to him, I think really demonstrated what brokenness is and what it looks like. we just kind of struck up a conversation. And he asked me, I asked him, hey, how are things going? And his response, when I ask you, if I ask you, hey, how are you doing? Our response is, oh, good. So I asked him, hey, how are you? How are you doing? His response was, I'm dying. I have cancer. And I'm dying. Before I could even say anything, he began to tell me about the cancer, the pain, the treatments, the visits to the hospitals, the weight loss. I mean, he must have been about 70 or 80 pounds. He's just bone. I asked him, I said, do you have any family around here? He said, no. My father passed away from cancer years ago. My mom lives in Virginia. I don't ever get to see her. I said, how about friends? Do you have anyone here? He said, no. It's like, I see my doctor. I see her the most, and she's a very nice person. She cares about me. I said, anyone else? He said, no. He was a man. Okay? I've been around people who have been suffering from cancer, and I know how difficult and challenging that is for them. And those that have a great support system are able to endure a lot better. Imagine being alone. See, I went to San Francisco right after one of our members in our church, a 26, 27-year-old. He lost his battle with cancer just a few weeks before this trip. And I know how much, even the support of the community, I know how helpful that was for him. But this guy had no one, and he's dying. It's not something that I've really experienced or I've been exposed to very much. After that week in San Francisco last summer, I came back and I feel like I'm a lot more alert to the brokenness that's around me. But you know, the funny thing is, I think the brokenness has always been there. I've just not been able to see it. Because I think that I think because I lived in this little bubble of mine, that I really failed to see the depth of brokenness that exists in our world. And not just in downtown, in the city, but here in the suburbs as well. Brokenness has no prejudice when it comes to where it strikes. No race, no social economic, no culture. It can strike any and all. The Israelites, they had to deal with brokenness as well. They were oppressed and they suffered tremendously. In Exodus, the couple chapters before our text today, in Exodus 1, verse 13 and 14, so the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and make bricks, and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands. That's what Exodus 1, 13 and 14 says. The Egyptians treated the Israelites harshly. They demanded so much work for them. Israelites, they suffered, they were hurting, and they were like, oh, why is all this happening to us? So they kind of cry out to God, or they just kind of cry out in general. Chapter 2, verse 23 and 25, it says this. They groaned in their slavery and cried out. And their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. And in verse 25 it says, and God was concerned about them. God hears and He knows. That's the comfort that I draw. God hears and God knows. God called Moses to save the Israelites, to help them come out of Egypt. And chapter 3, we see the great dialogue that takes place. But one of the things that Moses asks for is, who should I tell them? Send me. Who am I to go? Why would they listen to me? Who should I tell them sent me? And God says in chapter 3, tell them, I am. I sent you. That Yahweh sent me to you. See, these words I am and Yahweh, I mean, to us it's like, what does Yahweh mean? You may be familiar with that term, you've heard it before. Yahweh is simply a name of God, right? In the Gospel of John, John talks about seven of the I am statements that Jesus makes. And it's very clear to the listeners when he uses that phrase, he is referring to God. And he's connected back to this, back to the other aspects or other sections of the scripture. I am has sent me to you. It would have been for these Israelites who were in captivity, to hear that Yahweh or I am has sent this prophet to rescue them would have been comforting and would have been a reason for hope. In response to the tragedies that are going on all around us, to all the brokenness, I believe there is a clear message from God that He sees, that He knows, and is also concerned for us. We're faced with a crisis. There is clear opposition to our core beliefs, and that is evident, that is clear. Many Christians are being persecuted, and they are even being killed. Persecution is happening all around us. We live in a very broken world, broken lives, broken relationships. Now, I want to challenge you this morning with a couple of things as I close. Knowing and seeing all of this that is around us, what should we do? I think first, we need to get right with God. These events are clear that we really never know when our time will come. It could be from tragic events like this, or it could be simply a car accident. It could be anything. Death has no prejudice also about age. Young as well as old. We feel like, when an older person passes away, we're like, they lived a full life. But yet, when there was someone younger, it's like, what a tragedy. Well, it's tragic in both incidents. Because the death affects families and friends. I don't know where you stand with God. I don't know your backgrounds. The events in the world, both near and far, they're a fresh reminder that we never know when our time will come. We must get right with God. How would you have answered the question if the government pointed the gun at you and asked you, are you a Christian? You were the first person he called to stand. You might think, I would have said yes. Would your answer change if you were the second person he asked? One of the comments that people made about this is this: the bravest Christian, ? The second person who said yes. Spend time daily in prayer and meditating on God's word. We have to get right with God. Second thing we need to do is we need to pray for others. Prayer is a powerful tool that we have at our disposal. We pray. Because when we don't know what to do, we pray. What can I do for the people in Roseburg but pray? What can I do for our brothers and sisters in the path of destruction and violence and death in Syria? What can we do but pray for them? You can never go wrong with praying more. We must pray. We must learn to pray. And I believe as you begin to pray for others, God will start softening your heart. Hearts will be aligned to God. Through that will cause us to bring a revival to the city. This hashtag, it's good, it's great. I'm glad it trended, because it's not trending anymore. I'm glad it was there, but you know what? Our lifestyle, our words, our actions, has to back up that. What does that mean? It means our actions and our words, our love, has to back it up. That without action, that hashtag is simply just words and letters. Jesus says in John chapter 13, verse 34 and 35, "So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." There's power in love. Love one another. Love others. And lastly, I think we need to really seek what God desires for each one of us. What is it that the Lord has called you to do? What is it that the Lord desires of you? As you sit here and as you listen, as you see, maybe some of you guys are going through brokenness. Maybe you have experienced the pain. See, brokenness can hit in almost any ways. For parents, the brokenness can come in the form of a son or a daughter that has kind of gone off the path a little bit. Brokenness can come through financial situation, loss of job and business. I had a friend of mine who was being sued for, he sold a business, and the new people who took over the business, they sued him for, they felt like he was misleading. But he provided all the documents that, it was really a frivolous lawsuit. 2.5 years of battle in the court excellently just threw it away. They're like, you have no case. But 2.5 years they suffered, because every day they had to go through this. Different emotions that come with being sued. Sometimes the family situation causes brokenness, a divorce. Sometimes it's an illness. This is the world that we live in. I'm sorry to bring such bad news, but this is the reality. But we as Christians, we have responsibility, I believe, that God has called each one of us to be a difference maker, to be the salt and the light in this world. My hope and my prayer is that Yeongnam is for this church to be filled with men and women who love God and impact the world for Christ by the radical love. Those who will show the world what it means to be a Christian, not through some clever hashtag, but by our actions.